What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of the Opening Line presented by EliteSportsBetting.com. Now, if you've been watching for the last, 4 or 5 months, you see Frank and I's face every day popping up, and we're breaking down the MLB slate. And we could do that today. We could do that. There's some games. We're getting down to
it is a terrible baseball.
it's not good, but we could power through and do the MLB slate here as the postseason race starts to heat up. But instead, first college football show of the year. We got 4 games tonight. We got a handful of games tomorrow, and then a full slate of games on Saturday. Frank, how are we doing? How are we looking forward to this college football season?
Yeah, different than last season. Although I had a decent amount of success last season and in the season before that, a little bit different this year. College sports are sort of my bread and butter. I know a little bit less about them, in all honesty, because it's really hard for me to follow. I don't know. It's hard for me to follow the NFL schedule than along 130, however many teams for college football that I've got to chase around here and follow. So player-wise, not a lot of, I'll kind of default to you on, coaching strategies and players and stuff. I sort of do, as usual, more of a player or a team breakdown and see what the model says and just sort of trust it from there. It was an interesting year last year, to say the least. There was a lot of question marks. I think, in all honesty, it made opportunities where, like, hey, this team might have a COVID situation. We can, if you like that side at all, you should take that side. And there were opportunities where you could get like a touchdown of value. There were times where that could go against you too. I remember a couple games, maybe it was like a BYU or like a Utah game or something that I took a side in, and then like 6 players were out the next like hour and no one knew anything that was going to happen, So that won't happen as much this year. Obviously the rules sort of changed for this season where, there's less of like a need to isolating things, and playing football outside, I guess, helps a little bit.
Yeah. And I think the less moving things around, like most conferences just come out and say, like, all right, if you have a breakout, like, it's a forfeit. I saw the SEC, if both teams have a breakout, it's a double forfeit.
I love that. Yeah.
So I'm interested with this year too. Like, it is tough to get a grasp on like what 2020 showed us. We saw like the Big Ten, I'll just use them. Penn State, Michigan, and Wisconsin all had down years. And Indiana and Maryland kind of came up, and we're wondering if Indiana can do it again. Obviously, Ohio State's still, head and shoulders better than everybody else, so it's probably not going to end up mattering. But the teams that had outlier years in 2020, I'm interested to see if that's a thing to stay, or if it's gonna revert back.
I'm a little bit more well versed in college basketball as well, and we saw sort of the same thing, right? Like, we saw the UNCs and the Dukes and all of those teams sort of struggle. We just saw more teams condensed in, and the tournament was, just a smorgasbord of like good, not great teams playing against each other and playing incredibly good games where a lot of variance could come in. We'll see less of that, I think, going forward for sure, because the uncertainty of things just isn't there. And we're seeing them play on baseball too. 2020 was a very weird season, and now the cream is rising to the top here in September in the baseball season. So I think the only natural progression is going to be that.
Yeah, it's interesting, but a lot of teams weren't practicing their first string offense against first string defense. That's pretty much all thrown out the window. The big talk has been basically what you can get your vaccination rate on your team to make things easier for you as you go, because nobody wants to forfeit and lose the home game revenue, which a lot of teams lost last year. Before we get into breaking down some games, we are streaming it live on Twitch at Elite Betting. We're also on YouTube at the Elite Sports Network. If you do miss today's show and you want to come back before the games tonight, because we're going to talk about some games tonight, we're going to talk about games tomorrow. Head over there, and the videos will be archived. You can catch up there. So we're not going to break down obviously every game. It's going to be a little bit different than MLB. We're picking some games to kind of go over.
We don't want to do all 65 games or whatever it is.
You think we can fit that in about an hour? Like 45 seconds?
I don't know that I could tell everyone my numbers and that.
So we're just going to talk about a handful of games. We're not giving away all of our picks either. So head over to EliteSportsBetting.com. Frank's got 4 plays for the weekend. I have 6. We're giving out 2 each, so ton of plays still out there.
And we match on 2 of them that we'll talk about later. It'll matches on a couple of games here.
Right. It's no opposites first week. That's a good start. So first game, we'll go. It starts tonight. Ohio State and Minnesota. Minnesota currently 14-point underdog. That number has kind of bounced around in 13.5 and 14. Total has come down here. We're sitting at 62.5, 63. This was 65, 66 early in the week, so a lot of under on or money coming in on the under. What do you make of this game?
Yeah, this is a weird one, right? Ohio State, no Fields, obviously coming back. That looks like they're going to go with C.J. Stroud, who's more of a traditional quarterback. I wasn't overly impressed in the little bit that I saw out of his arm in the spring games. It looks like he's a smart, good quarterback, but he doesn't have an overly impressive arm, right? It didn't seem like it was crazy strong arm. They obviously will praise him and say like, oh, he's, ready for this moment and all of that stuff. Not surprised to see this total come down. This total has come down quite a bit. I lean towards the over now because of that, but I think both these teams are going to run the ball, right? Like Minnesota was pretty putrid from a defensive rush side last year in Ohio State, new quarterback and a great offensive line, maybe more underrated. If you can underrate something in Ohio State, right, it's probably the offensive line over like the last decade. So,
yeah,
and they're going to be good again. And I think they're just going to need to run the ball. They obviously have great receivers. They're going to make Stroud look a little bit better, I think, than what he actually is. He's going to be able to, depend on that run game and then take some shots downfield, which it's hard to gather anything for me, especially on spring game, not knowing, the X's and O's of football as much as other sports. But it looked like he was willing to take some shots, although, I wasn't overly impressed by his arm strength.
Yeah, so the tough thing with Ohio State this year for me was the last 2 years, obviously they had top like 3 offense in the last 2 seasons. Is that going to be Ryan Day every year, or is that
right?
Like, was Justin Fields that freaking good? Like Justin Fields was the number 2 recruit. He was behind Trevor Lawrence coming out of high school, if I remember correctly. C.J. Stroud not rated that high, but he was still a high. I don't think he was quite a 5-star, but I think he was like one of the first 4 stars that wasn't. That's kind of where it is. I think
quarterback when he plays, like he drops back, he stands in the pocket. I'm sure he can run a little bit. They all sort of can now. But
I would say there's really not. There's no such thing as like an immobile quarterback anymore. They're all pretty much athletes. But yeah, I'm interested to see. I have them projected as one of the best offenses of college football this year. And it's really whether. Like I could see them struggling early. Like you don't have the talent of Fields kind of fixing it, but like you couldn't go into a better situation. Like this is kind of like the quarterback at Alabama, right? Like we've seen this with like Jalen Hurts and then Tua and then Mac Jones. Like
great offensive line, great receivers,
right? Like
running backs.
Yeah. Ohio State literally might have 2 All-Americans at wide receiver and Wilson and Olave. And like you said, their offensive line never gets talked about, but they put out. They're not putting out first-round talent every year, but they're putting out multiple NFL guys. It seems like every year. So, I lean over now too. I'm with that.
What's your feel for this game? I think it's going to start slow. I think of all the, we're generally going to talk about the best teams that are going to play here today. For this week. I think this probably has the potential to be sort of the closest one, right? Like on the road, really unsure about the quarterback situation. I think both teams are going to have to run the ball and run it a lot, which is we're seeing a drop in total, which could, generally benefits the underdog,
Right.
So I kind of feel like I think Ohio State's offensive line will eventually assert their dominance over the Minnesota rush defense, but I think both teams are going to be ready for the opposite team to run the ball pretty heavily.
Yeah, Minnesota's offense kind of took a step back after they were fantastic in 2019. We'll see if they can get back. Again, I'm interested to see these teams in 2020 that kind of went way different from what their 2019 was. Minnesota's kind of the team they surprised in 2019. Maybe they were just reverting back in 2020 to the normal self. But yeah, I remember Ohio State played at Indiana, I think a couple years ago. I remember Indiana jumped out to an early lead, and then Ohio State just blew the doors off them in the second half. I could see that happening here. Like it's the same type of thing. Minnesota just kind of, when you're out, when the talent discrepancy is this big, you do kind of want to slow the, like it benefits Minnesota to kind of churn this clock, keep the ball at Ohio State's offense because Ohio State's going to score. It's just a matter of can you basically capitalize on every opportunity that you have here. So I'm with you. I lean a little bit over now, but it's not enough for me to play. And honestly, I'm not trying to fade that like 3-4 point move from earlier in the week. Next game, possibly a playoff preview. Both these teams have major playoff, I guess, implications. Georgia and Clemson. I mean, this is on a neutral. They're playing in Charlotte.
Yeah. That's going to be overwhelming Clemson fans, right? I would imagine.
I mean, Georgia's not that far away.
Yeah, I guess. I guess they do travel for college.
Right. I mean, like, I think when Alabama played Georgia in the national championship game, that game was in Atlanta, and I think it was like, they said it was like 60-40 Georgia fans. So, like, I think when you're close enough, like, there's like a certain radius where, and these fan bases are big enough to where people will pay out.
Neutral-ish.
Neutral-ish. Maybe some Clemson help here, but Clemson -3. This, got up to 3.5, even touched 4 a little bit, like last week. Has come back down since then. Total in this game is down to 50. What do you make of these teams? Do you see these two teams both being possible playoff contenders, or what do you have in this game?
Well, yeah, what's funny, I had a sub reach out and ask me about some futures and what he just kind of subjectively said there's 5 really good teams and then everyone else looks like pretty terrible. And the 5 teams, obviously, Bama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. And I looked at my numbers just to see what the difference was, because like these teams are so close together, right? Is there really a big difference between Notre Dame and Penn State this year, or like anything like that? So, right, like the difference between 11 and 25 really isn't that big. The difference between Oklahoma, who is my 5th team, and my number 6 team, which actually it happens to be Wisconsin, is the same difference between Wisconsin and Washington for me, which is 14. So 6-14 and 5-6 is the same difference in terms of like what I would expect from a win percentage side or a point spread side of those teams facing each other. So, I think you're right. I think these are both playoff teams. No matter what happens here, I think this game is more important to Georgia than it is to Clemson, because they obviously have a tougher schedule. Clemson's just going to beat the doors off the ACC again, So if they lose this game, a good chance they don't lose another one, right? So both these defenses, though, are going to be really nasty. There's obviously some uncertainty with Clemson. I'm not even try to say the quarterback's last name. We'll just call him.
It's pretty easy. Uiagalelei.
Yeah, I'll leave that to you. He's a super athlete, right? Like he'd be in the NFL right now if he could. Like if he was eligible to be in the NFL, the team probably would have picked him. But it probably not that different of a game plan than what it was last year for them offensively, other than the fact that he did get a lot of snaps because they were winning so heavily in so many of those games, and Lawrence had some COVID time down as well. Right. But the defense is what is going to be, I think, the difference. They weren't overly impressive. They weren't like an elite defense last year, and we sort of saw that play out at the end of the year. But they all like returned everybody, so it's going to be a pretty nasty defense. They had Kendrick actually transferred to Georgia, right? And they're still going to have maybe the best secondary in the country. So it's going to be tough treading out there. JT Daniels will go for Kirby Smart's offense, maybe the best Kirby Smart quarterback that we've seen at Georgia. Probably pretty close, Well, outside of the part-timer Justin Fields. But they always, Georgia always dominates on the offensive line. They always dominate on the defensive line. You hard pressed to find. Maybe Alabama has like bigger sized guys. Clemson's close to them, but they always just get the biggest guys in the South that they can find to play offensive line and defensive line. Which another thing, like we talked about with Ohio State, like JT Daniels is going to come into a great situation with a ridiculous offensive line, good receivers, and a really, really, really good upfront defense. I don't know. The market's kind of saying Clemson is a couple points better than Georgia here. If we say this is like neutral-ish, maybe a 1.5 better than Georgia, and I agree with that. I have Clemson number 2, Georgia number 3. This is, I think it is going to be a low-scoring game. Just subjectively, I didn't have an edge on this game at all, but I do think they're going to sort of punch each other in the mouth along the way. And 2 new quarterbacks, maybe you're going to struggle against, elite level defenses here.
Yeah, this game, I did play, and this is you should get into the bet pack early. I bet Georgia and Clemson under at 51.5 earlier this week. That's down to 50. 50.5 maybe. Still a little bit of an edge there, but not nearly as exciting.
You generally, so sorry, I don't want to interrupt you too much. Do you generally see, because now we've seen 2 unders, right, with elite team, do we generally see slower offense, better defense beginning of the year, or is that just me being subjective about this?
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of true, just because like offense is so much more on timing. It's kind of like the whole the saying of like defense travels, like offense, like defense is what it is. Like it's kind of like we're just matching up. Like here we go. Like offense is like, all right, this if your offensive line isn't like all in sync, and all of a sudden a play gets blown up. So I don't know. I've never truly looked at like week one and see the difference. But I would tend to subjectively say that offenses tend to get going later in the year, more so than I don't know. I feel like, this offense really turned it on in the second half of the year. I feel like you don't really hear that too much about defenses, but maybe that's just because nobody likes to talk about defense. I played this under 51.5. I mean, you could maybe play a little bit on this at 50.5. I'm not really like the 51's kind of, 27-24. This just seems like a 27-24 game. So 51's kind of a key number here that you want to grab. But
I was close to under on this one as well. Yeah, like
right. 40, and 49. The big thing, like it's everything you said. Georgia, my one concern is Georgia has not had a quarterback or an offense that really was able to get them to the playoffs. Georgia's recruited as probably the best team in the country the last 4 years. Maybe you could say Alabama has recruited better. If not, they're on the same level. Georgia has not made the playoffs since 2017. And like that's an under when you're recruiting that well, like that's an indictment on Kirby Smart and the coaching staff. Like you're underperforming.
They also don't have as easy of a ride into that spot. But I agree. He's worse than Saban, right? He's worse than Dabo.
He's worse than I'd say Ryan Day. Like I always said this about Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer underachieved at Ohio State. Like Ohio State was recruiting as the second best team in the country, kind of close to what Alabama was, and you're seeing what Saban and Alabama was doing. And I know Urban Meyer won a national championship at Ohio State, but like he didn't make the playoff. He made the playoff one time outside of the original year when you could argue that they shouldn't have made it, like TCU and Baylor should have. Kirby Smart's kind of in that same thing. Like, they do have the tougher schedule just because it's the SEC, but they lost to South Carolina a couple years ago. They lost as a touchdown favorite to LSU back in 2018, where they would have probably made the playoff even though they lost in the SEC championship game. They just tend to lose. And I said this earlier this week, and I had some Georgia fans blowing up my Twitter. Just because they lose to LSU, they shouldn't lose that game. 2019, sure. 2019 LSU was great. But since LSU's kind of just been like whatever, not a great team, just a good team.
When
Alabama doesn't lose those games. If Ohio State, since Ryan Day's got there, they haven't lost a game outside of the playoff. Like that's what Georgia's bar is. But I think both defenses here have such an advantage. And JT Daniels was really good at the end of last year. I know like QBR's opponent adjusted. He would have had the 4th best QBR. I don't know. It was like Missouri. The big thing was he beat up on Cincinnati. And no, I think Cincinnati's defense is good, but like it's so difficult when the talent is so different.
They're just not going to have they're not going to have the size, right? Or the speed.
Right. Like Cincinnati's defense is good. Don't get me wrong. But when you're going up against like the elite talent of college football, defense usually gets thrown out. We saw this with Alabama. We saw this with Ohio State in the playoff. You got to score 40 points. Like you have to. Like, so when you're playing these elite teams, defense kind of gets thrown out. We saw Nick Saban said it last year. The game's changed. So in this game, both offenses kind of being a question mark. In terms of, we talked about with Ohio State, can they get going? New quarterbacks here. JT Daniels doesn't have a ton of experience. DJ doesn't have a ton of experience for Clemson.
Yeah.
I just really think both defensive lines kind of have their way. Clemson struggled running the ball last year. They don't have Travis Etienne to break off a 60-yard run every game. I think that kind of forces them into obvious pass situations. That's not going to work against Georgia's defense. And I think Clemson's defense is just going to be fantastic. So I'm not buying in yet to Georgia, but their offense, I think they're going to be improved, but I don't think they're going to be this elite level that, we saw last year. So
Sure.
under there for me, again, not really that interested unless it's at 51. I got 51.5. Head over to leadsportsbetting.com. My plays ran on Tuesday. They're probably going to be on Monday or Tuesday, adding them, whatever, Frank, you put yours on Monday, right? So
yeah,
head over there.
Usually Monday, and then, we'll,
Right.
throughout the week, the other days we'll have all the other sports going on, college basketball coming up and NBA coming up, of course.
Yep. So head over to leadsportsbetting.com. Get in there early. Same thing for NFL. The NFL's a week away. Get in, got to get in before the line moves, because in football, it's very very key. It's different from MLB too. When we were watching MLB, the plays were, an hour or two, old. There was a little bit of movement, maybe not a lot.
This you get weekly market here.
Yeah, a couple days we could have a lot of movement. Last game, we'll talk just the general game of interest, Alabama and Miami. I don't want to say a playoff preview, but there is a outside chance that Miami could make a run in the ACC. But just to kind of echo your point about how different the top 5 teams are from the rest of college football, Alabama is a 19.5-point favorite against Miami, who everybody's probably going to say is a top 15 team. Here it is. Yeah. Total in this game 61. This actually came down to 60. I think we even saw some 59.5, a little bit over money since yesterday. But I guess what's your thought process on this game? Miami's good, but Alabama is just a different animal. We're seeing that with almost a 3-touchdown favorite between 2 top 15 teams here.
Yeah, I had this game at 20. I was surprised to see that. I was like, man, I'm definitely gonna have an edge on this game. Neutral field, right? They're playing in Atlanta. It's gonna be, fast field turf area going on. This is a bad matchup for Miami, though, right? D'Eriq King is gonna have to be. It's gonna have to be like the Johnny Manziel game, right? He's gonna have to beat them on his own, and they have 4 NFL linebackers, so make sure he's not getting out of the pocket, and that's gonna be probably the difference in this game. Alabama is replacing a lot on offense, right? Sarkisian's not there. Mac Jones, Najee Harris. I don't remember the receiver's name that went.
Waddle and Smith.
They lost a lot of pieces on offense. So, this total in the 61 range, creeping down quite a bit. Not surprising to see that. I think this is a weird matchup for both offenses. Not that Miami is a great defense. They're good, not great. But I'll be curious to see what the game plan is on offense for them. And I don't think that D'Eriq King is going to have much of a chance to get around these linebackers and get outside of them. I think Saban's just going to be ready for that, right? These great coaches like Belichick, Saban, even great NBA coaches, what do? They take away your best piece. And Miami has one very glaring piece on offense that is going to be very good, right, for them. Yeah. Like the quarterbacks make the world go round in the NFL and in college football. But this is the worst matchup you could possibly have, with 4 NFL-sized speed linebackers running at you all day and making sure you can't escape. Alabama, I think, will get a lead in this game, and that's going to make a rushing attack for Miami very difficult to continue going, and it's going to force King to throw a lot, and that's going to be a little bit of a struggle against, like I said, those linebackers and those cornerbacks for this Bama defense that is going to be very, 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 very good again. I don't think the secondary is quite as good as Clemson, but up front and in the linebacker side, any of these teams that depend on rushing the ball are going to have a hard time.
Yeah, Miami, D'Eriq King tore his ACL in the bowl game, and he's they healthy, but you kind of would like a easier game.
And Saban right?
We were talking before the show. It's hard to Alabama just destroys these teams, and they play a bigger name school every year. It seems like in week 1, and they just I don't know what they are against the spread in those games, but I feel like it's 10-0. Whatever.
They for the last decade they've played USC, and they had some UCLA games when they were good, and now Miami. And they seem to win by 30 every time.
Yeah, it's there's something there's a preparation. Obviously, we know that Nick Saban is probably the best coach of all time, from what he's done the last 15 years in Tuscaloosa. It's just a game. There's so many things, like you said, that have to go right for Miami. If D'Eriq King didn't have a knee injury, then you're okay, he doesn't like, you don't have any, like, maybe there's a little bit of a trust issue with planting, and he is a guy that's super mobile. So like that's an aspect. And I don't know. It's just one of those games where I look at Miami and everything. Like, I do lean Miami in this game, and I lean the under as well, which part of me, I don't want to do it because Alabama could score 48. Like, I don't want to, like, Miami lost, they lost their two guys. Yeah.
This get out of hand with where, like, Miami has 2 turnovers inside their own 20-yard line pretty quickly, and those turn into touchdowns in like a minute, right? Like, that happened a lot.
I will say with Miami, that Manny Diaz is known for defense, so I'm not really. I think their defense will be fine. I don't know if it'll be fine this game, but it does kind of work out that they lost their 2 best edge defenders. Both were first-round draft picks. I remember, like, the other guy went like early second round from Miami, so like that's going to hurt. But Alabama lost everybody as well, but that doesn't matter at Alabama ever. But it's kind of like Ohio State. Maybe there's a little bit of slowness to Alabama this game, but like you said, a couple things go wrong, and all of a sudden Alabama's at 40, 45, 49 points, and you don't need that many scores from Miami to win this game. And if they get down, they're going to throw a ton. So game script wise, I don't love the under just because it could get out of hand, but I could also see Alabama just sitting on it because they have a nobody next week in Mercer, so that's just going to be a play. But they have to go to Florida, and I know Florida lost a lot, but that's not exactly an easy game for if the offense does have some issues. They might kind of just like, all right, we got out to a lead. We're not going to show anything on tape. And we have to remember Steve Sarkisian was brilliant. They brought in Bill O'Brien, who we all know is not exactly this offensive genius that everybody made him out to be, 10 years ago. So could be some issues with Alabama's offense. That's probably the interesting. It's kind of like Ohio State. I'm interested to see if Ohio State's offense. I honestly
forgot it was Bill O'Brien. No wonder why the turtle's coming down.
Right. Like, it's one of those things. Like, Steve Sarkisian literally for like the last 2 years at Alabama has played like perfect offense. Like, people forget they were the only team to play a close game against LSU in 2019. They lost by 5. They were the only team that probably could have played, and then Tua broke his hip. But this offense, Alabama's offense has been fantastic the last 2 years. They lose that offensive mind, and Kiffin's gone. Like, it went from Kiffin, who we've known has a good offense, and we're seeing that at Ole Miss. Like, he's been known. Yeah. Bill O'Brien has not been known like as a good offensive mind for literally like a decade now. So that'll be interesting. And Nick Saban, like, can he fix Bill O'Brien type of thing? I don't know, but that is definitely an area of concern for me. But I lean under here. Didn't play it. I'm glad. I don't want anything to do with this game, just because Alabama tends to just ragdoll these teams. So next game on the board, Michigan State and Northwestern. We both, actually, in the next 2 games we're going to talk about, the last 2 games, I should say, both are on the same side here. But in this game, Northwestern is a 3-point favorite. Total in this game is 46. What are your thoughts for this game, and what do we each like in this game?
Yeah, it's my favorite bet of the week. I'm kind of surprised to see this number under in my opinion. But I think both these teams defensively are going to be worse, but I think they're also going to be worse offensively. Especially Michigan State in this game. Pat Fitzgerald has made it a point to be an incredibly good defensive coach for whatever reason. With Northwestern, they were one of the best defenses in the country, and I know that it's hard to rate things because of conference play, and that's basically all we got last year. But they were very, very good defensively last year, and they lost a lot of pieces. But Michigan State, man, like, do we even know who the quarterback is? Because I don't know that we know yet. And there's a quarterback competition in week 1. Like, this makes it, I think, a little bit tough. And neither of these quarterbacks are any good, right? They have like a Temple transfer and maybe a freshman or sophomore, someone who was there. Michigan State was 2-5 last year. They were dead last on their side of the Big Ten. And Northwestern went to the title game and had a 10-6 lead against Ohio State in that game, and then got kind of steamrolled and just out-talented in the second half. So I think Northwestern obviously has, a better chance to sort of hold this game down But 45 seems like that seems like climbing up a mountain for either one of these teams, especially just because I don't really know where Michigan State's points are going to come from. They just, second year coach Mel Tucker. They don't really have a lot going on here, and he still hasn't named a starting quarterback. I don't know, man. I know that Northwestern lost a lot of pieces, but they've been a good defense and kind of turning around good defensive play for last 5 years with Pat Fitzgerald there. So, I don't know. This to me has like 16-10 written all over it.
I'm with you. I played 45.5. Luckily, I played a day later than you, so I got a half a point. But like I'm looking at it now, there's some 46.5s popping up. I can understand. Like I try to talk myself into it. Like why is the over being bad? Like okay, or do we think Michigan State's offense is going to be like great? Like no, I don't think either of these offenses are going to like. I don't think this
even the Northwestern quarterback played quite a bit last year. Well, he was like a Clemson transfer or something.
Yeah, he played in 2019. He didn't play last year. He got beat out. Yeah, 2019. But he was terrible.
He had a 46% completion rate.
He was so bad. And I was talking to someone about this, and when he was named the starter like 2 weeks ago, whenever it was kind of a surprise. And people were like, really? They're going with this guy? Like, how are they going to score? So I look at both these offenses, like you said, I don't think either offense is ever going to be a team that's going to like blow it up here and just explode for points. They haven't, either of these programs haven't done that in like 10 years. I know Mel Tucker's new, maybe he's going to try to make that, but
he just doesn't have to do it though.
Right. He had to get like 15 transfers this year just to have like a talented team. Yeah. That's how poor they were in the talent in regards to talent. Yeah. I look at the defense. Maybe Northwestern's defense takes a huge step back. I doubt it. Like, again, even in their down years, their defense was still the strength. In Michigan State, I can't see Michigan State's defense being terrible. Add in the fact that Northwestern wants to play super, super slow, and this game only gets doomed by turnovers, in my opinion. So, I don't know.
Both these offenses, I think, have as many question marks as I think the defense got worse. Maybe that's why the total is going up, but I think both these offenses are absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Right? I don't know. It's one of those things where I've now talked about it in like trying to go to the other side, like not talk myself out of the pick because I made the bet, and this is I'm hoping this comes in, but like you said, 16, like 24-20, that gets it done. Like we're home at 24-20. So I don't know. I don't think Northwestern's defense is going to fall off. I think Michigan State's defense is still going to be fine. Maybe we're overrating the defenses here, but I tend to think that both of these teams will slow it down. This game's tomorrow night, not Saturday. So tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Hopefully it's just your normal Big Ten just slugfest. Because I'm with you. 40. I would put whatever number you get now. 40. It's up 46. There's some 46.5s out there. Go wild with those. Because I just, again, I can't see both of these teams lighting it up. Like it's such a small chance here. I make this game like 40. Like this is where we're at here with both of these teams. So, we'll root for nothing to happen in that game. In typical Big Ten fashion, we'll root for nothing to happen. Next game is Ohio and Syracuse. We both, again, like I said, both of us agree on 2 plays. We're breaking them down. We still have plays in the bet pack, so you want to head over there. But Ohio and Syracuse, this is a game that we were kind of confused by. Again, line movement kind of went the other way, if you will. But Ohio's a 1.5 point dog. They're at home. Total in this game is 56. We both like the dog here in Ohio getting, some points. We're not going to go for the 1.5 because it's kind of worthless here. But we're going to go money line. So break down this game. Why do we like the Bobcats in this one?
I don't know. This is Daryl, right? Like, but yeah, I did play money line anytime, pretty much, especially for college. That I see a game inside of 2.5, inside of 3. Really, I'm just gonna take the money line instead. That's proved to be profitable over time. If you look at that as opposed to taking the points, mostly just because of the key number of 3 there. Yeah, I this is a gross game, right? Like Syracuse is absolutely terrible. We don't even know if Ohio's good at all. Like even for their own MAC, right? Like we don't know if they're good just because we haven't really seen them, and the MAC schedule got destroyed. But I know Syracuse is terrible, and I don't know there's many teams in the country that they could go on the road and be favored against. Like I just don't really see it. Will they be better than last year? I don't know. Probably, right? Like it's hard to maintain that level of awfulness, but Ohio's returning a lot of guys, and now there was almost no game experience from last year, but they are returning a lot of guys, and I feel like that's a much more steady approach to starting in week 1, like we've talked about. Obviously, not making a direct comparison here, but like Alabama is always ready in week 1, and the teams with a lot of moving parts that have to play against a team like Alabama is going to struggle, and I could see Syracuse doing that. Like their offensive line is horrendous, and we know that takes a lot of coordination and planning and experience to play together. And Ohio is one of those teams that are just returning a lot of guys, and they have Syracuse is going to go with this 2 quarterback system. Apparently, from what I read, that's really hard to coordinate early on in the season. And
they couldn't be too different. Like DeVito, who I think is named the starter, but they still are going to go with the. DeVito likes to throw. If I remember correctly, yes. And the other guy, I can't remember his name right now. He's a runner. So like it's not even one of those things where like, I mean, I guess you do have the game plan for both, but like when the guy comes in, you're like, all right, here comes the passing, here comes the running. It's easier to there's no like surprise.
And Ohio has also kind of quasi 2 quarterback system, but they're similar, right? They both run the ball particularly well. They have 4 guys, actually, two decent running backs, 2 decent. Now, do they look good because they played like Akron last year? Yeah, probably, right? But Syracuse isn't any better than those teams, really. Like they're maybe a little bit better than the bottom of the MAC, but like they're not that much better. And like I can see the athletes on the field for Ohio. My numbers like them. I think Ohio's the better team, and they're at home. I don't know. I don't really understand this number. I guess if we're anticipating that Syracuse is a lot better, but I just don't really see it. I think this offensive line is really going to struggle, and now they're going to go 2 quarterbacks, 2 different cadences, 2 different kind of setups and systems. I don't know. I don't see this total sit around 56. That seems like a little bit ambitious to me, just because I think both teams aren't very good offensively. And like I said, I think the Syracuse offensive line really struggles. And if there's anything that I've gathered from watching football over the last few years, it's that it's almost impossible to get around a terrible offensive line, especially with this uncertainty at quarterback for them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got plus 105. I saw that number. That number has come down a little bit. Like plus 100 is like the best that I've seen out there. I'm even seeing some like minus 105, minus 110. So it does seem like the money line's coming back. Like there's plus 2s out there with some big time juice. I have no interest. 2.5, I could maybe be talked into. Like in the college game, kickers, you could miss an extra point or whatever. But really, if it's 2.5 or lower, I'm probably going to go with money line. So that's why you see. But I'm with you. I think I make Ohio small favorite here. Syracuse is terrible at pass blocking, and while Ohio probably isn't exactly, it's not Clemson that's going to just like be in DeVito's face all game.
I can confirm Ohio is not Clemson. Yeah.
Right. Safe to say that's a good one to go with putting your money on. But I'm with like Syracuse is terrible. Like we say Ohio played terrible teams last year. Like Syracuse went 1-9 or 1-10, whatever they did, and like this team won 10 games in 2018. Syracuse is not anything that like Dino Babers. It's died. It's done. Like I don't see them coming back. There's not this influx of talent where you're excited. There's nothing to get excited about. They can't pass block, and they're starting the guy who's going to throw a lot. So for me, that's not great. I mean, I don't know how much they're going to rotate. It might be in every other drive thing. I don't know. Again, I personally don't think that. When has that ever worked? The 2 quarterback system, like within a game, it never does. So,
but usually because you have 2 bad quarterbacks,
right. Like we know this. Like that's what it is. Like one of them, like, oh, okay, this guy can't throw at all. Like, all right, let's put the other guy in. Like, well, he can throw, but he's not really that accurate. So, like, and he makes bad decisions or whatever. So, I don't know. I make Ohio better. Ohio's coach did retire. maybe that's a concern here. The guy that they promoted was the offense coordinator. He's been on the staff at Ohio since 2005. So like it's not even like
he's getting a ton of starters back.
Right, and it's not like a huge, shift of philosophy. He was the offense coordinator last year. He's been there since 2015. He knows how the program's been run. Ohio's been, you could probably say, the best MAC team of the last decade. Like this program is run pretty well.
Yeah.
Syracuse is not run well. I don't get this game. Like you said, I think you said it best when you said Syracuse probably isn't favored on the road versus many teams. And I don't think Ohio, like we're not even talking like we assume Ohio is like top of the MAC. Like it's not even like this is like bottom of the MAC team or middle of the MAC. Like Ohio is one of the best teams in the MAC. So I'm with you. I'll gladly fade the orange here. It's just Ohio was small favorites. It doesn't take much to go across zero. I'm not looking too much into that line movement, but I don't know. It kind of is one of those games where I could see Ohio getting some late money and like maybe ending up like -1, like -1.
I've seen this story before of like bad team on the road, especially early on in the season. That's a short favorite. I just like if you're betting Syracuse here, we don't know enough about either of these teams to be like, this is the right, Syracuse is the right side, right? Like if anything, there's going to be some level of steadiness to Ohio, especially early on in the season. Syracuse may prove out to be much better than them, but it's going to at least take a couple games, I think, for them to, if they're going to win like 3 or 4 this year, it's going to at least take a few games, I think, for that to happen.
Yeah, it's not one of those things like with 2020 being as weird as it was. I don't think teams just flip the switch and get it going. I started off the top with how the Big Ten kind of struggled. The bigger names, Penn State. I mean, even Penn State. The second half of last year they played better, but like it was against the worst competition. Like and like there's it's not one of those things where you get excited about it, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, Ohio for Frank and I. We also have bet the Michigan State Northwestern under. Both of those games lines are still available. We'll go there. You're good to go there and bet at the current numbers. Frank still has 2 other plays in the bet pack at elitesportsbetting.com. I have 4 other, I gave out Clemson on the show. That line's kind of gone. So I have 3 other plays, which one is the line has moved a little bit as well. So get in to the bet pack early. Like I said, Monday, Tuesday, pretty much all the plays. Paulie has a bunch of plays already. So you're going to get a lot of college football content from us for the season. So any final notes, anything you want to talk about I guess anything at all? College football, other sports, whatever. What do you got?
Yeah, you said it right there. Sign up, YouTube, subscribe, follow, whatever. It's free, obviously, and you'll get notifications when we go live. We'll get a little bit more of a steady schedule with football season coming up. We'll be doing, 3 or 4 football shows between the NFL and college and all that. We'll have NBA, college basketball, like so much content coming out. And if you want to get the full list of it, obviously head over to elitesportsbetting.com.
Yeah, we'll have probably 2 college football shows during the week. You got an NFL show during the week. Obviously you and Paulie still doing golf.
Baseball playoffs are going to be coming up. Like we'll have series bets, things like that. Yeah.
Right. Duke and I, if you guys remember last year, tailgate teaser, we do that Saturday morning. It'll be at 11 this year, 11 to 11:30. Basically break down maybe a couple games if there's some big games to break down, but we'll pick. I think we have 22 games lined up where we do a little contest and pick games against each other. It's a good time. 30 minutes before, you still get to see the game day picks. They're after our show, and headed right up into the college football Saturday. So I'm excited. College football back full. After the garbage of a slate last week, it wasn't really the start of college football, even though it was. This week is for real. Next week, NFL, and like Frank said, MLB playoffs coming, NBA, NHL, college basketball. It's really not that far away. Like we're like literally a month and a half, 2 months away from all of that starting to get going here. So, so head over to elitesportsbetting.com, sign up, get all of the content, more plays than you could ask for at elitesportsbetting.com. So over there, Elite Betting on Twitch, Elite Sports Network on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow breaking down baseball. And then, like I said, Saturday, Duke and I doing tailgate teaser, breaking down the college football slate. So for Frank, I am Austin. We will see you tomorrow.